Hello, Internet.
Hometown was once a quiet, largely rural community, until, as often happens, much larger powers decided to move in. An expanding empire takes over the land around the small community, and the old town is now surrounded by a rapidly growing fortress and city. A more threatening military presence is felt, and poverty quickly creeps in as the expanding empire takes advantage of the residents still in hometown. While the younger generation at least attempts to adapt to all the changes, the older generation deeply resents this intrusion into their old home. Many of the elders, including Asgore and Toil Dreamer, Father Alvin, Mayor Holiday, and her husband Rudolph, form their own tight-knit group that soon spirals into a cult. They're a small community with no means of standing up to an empire's armies. But there's always been old whispers of things far more powerful and terrible. Old gods and strange horrors that hail from a dark world parallel to their own. The cult focuses their attention specifically on tales of a dark prince, a goat-like entity made of fire and shadow that can pacify any enemy. Surely if they can gain the favor of something so dark and powerful, they'll have a means of driving away all these intruders and restoring hometown to the way it used to be. However, as everyone knows, trying to call up old gods demands sacrifices. Mayor Holiday, having gotten this group together, tries to take the brunt of this duty and first sacrifices her daughter, December. However, it seems to be a botched ritual and nothing useful results from it, leaving the mayor extremely bitter. The other elders are tasked with picking up vagrants or other troublemakers to try and successfully complete this ritual, but none seem to work. Unwilling to offer up their own delightful son, Azrael, the Dremmers, instead adopt an orphan from the poverty-stricken streets of the encroaching city, Chris. However, they find that upon adopting them, Azrael quickly forms a close bond with Chris. Azrael, like most of the younger generation, is unaware of his parents' and grandparents' intentions. Chris is not easy to take care of sometimes. They have weird interests, aren't very clean, and are often disobedient. Despite this, Toriel and Asgore find Chris growing on them too. The thought of sacrificing them gets harder and harder to swallow. However, the other elders start to pressure them, questioning why they're so intent on keeping this weird orphan around. Aren't they a symbol of everything going wrong with their little community? And with this invading modern future? Toriel continues to put it off, using the excuse that she is doing extensive research to make sure that they finally do this ritual correctly. While she is indeed conducting research, she also knows that they can't do anything with Chris as long as Azrael is around with them. However, when Azrael is offered an extended stay at the city's new university to get advanced training as a scholar, the Dremers don't have an excuse anymore. At the other elders' behest to do what's necessary for the good of the town, they decide to conduct the ritual with Chris. The cult brings Chris to an underground shelter in the woods outside town, with Chris none the wiser about their intentions until they are incapacitated and unable to escape. Toil's extensive research pays off, and Chris is appropriately sacrificed to the Dark Prince. The ritual causes them to vanish from the plane seemingly dead, but there's still no sign of the old god they were trying to summon. The Dremers are distraught at this seeming failure after they worked so hard to ensure that they did this right. The remaining elders double down, though insisting that they have to keep trying. Azrael returns from his training and is devastated to find his sibling missing. Toriel and Asgore, unable to admit what they did, lie to Azrael and say that Chris had a huge argument and left home on their own. Azrael vows to search for them and bring them back home, and while his parents try to dissuade him from this, they are unsuccessful. Meanwhile, unknown to anyone in the light world, the ritual was actually successful and transported Chris to the dark world, right into the home of Ralze, the Dark Prince that they were trying to reach. Ralze is delighted to finally have an actual human from the light world visit him. Sure, he's heard all about the previous sacrifices, but they never actually got to him. The dark world and the afterlife aren't really the same place, after all. Chris, however, is infuriated and despondent. They've already had a very hard life as an orphan, and now just when it seemed like they had a new family that they could trust, that trust was broken by adults who once again threw them away for their own purposes. Ralze, ever cheerful, assures them that they must be here for a reason, and that he has the means for them to not only return to the light world, but get retribution for what's happened to them and their hometown. The dark world is full of eldritch beasts, strange demons, and old gods, after all. He can grant them the forbidden knowledge and ability to speak to and even command these eldritch beasts. Once they form a strong enough bond with the beasts and make it through the bound gods that may bar the way, they can bring them back to the world of light and command them to do whatever Chris would like to the people living there. However, such power and ability comes at a high cost: Chris's human soul. Chris, seeing little other option and not feeling much attachment to their humanity anyway, agrees and sells their soul to the Dark Prince Ralze. Ralze excitedly promised that he'll take extra good care of their soul, and that he'll accompany them as they befriend the eldritch beasts lurking in the dark world. This arrangement certainly has some other benefits for Chris, too. In addition to this forbidden knowledge, Ralze's control over their soul grants them a degree of invulnerability. If Chris dies or is somehow psychologically destroyed, Ralze can use it to revive them completely. Ralze gives Chris suitable armor and weaponry for this venture, and the two set out into the vast dark realm of strange horrors, lost cities, and twisting paths in search of new friends and means back to the light world. While Chris is unsure about this journey at first, Ralze is all smiles, excited for them to gain some friendships that they clearly desperately need. Of course, he's excited for other reasons too. Those cultists have been calling out to him for such a long time, and now with Chris's human soul, he can finally enter the light world. Chris can forge the bonds that they've been lacking. Ralze and the Eldritch beasts they find will finally have access to the human world, and the people clamoring for terrible things to happen will get exactly what they asked for. How could that not be a happy ending?
Thank you for watching.